Welcome to Rising from the Rubble, the podcast where we share real life stories of people who have faced life-changing events like burnout, redundancy, depression, and found a way to rise stronger than before. I'm your host, Maria Newman, and as a coach, I help individuals navigate life's toughest transitions. Whilst listening to this podcast, you'll hear inspiring stories and coaching insights that will empower you to reclaim your confidence, redefine your future, and rise from your own rubble. It's now time to sit back, relax, and enjoy listening to our episode. Hello, Anna, and thank you for joining me today.
Hello, happy to be here.
What makes your story meaningful to others?
Oh, well, it's an everyday story. It's a situation that I think many people will relate to. There's no sort of dramatic scandal about anything, but it's a bit of a realization really about, sleepwalking through a life that wasn't me, and then using something pretty simple, pretty accessible that helped me to rebuild again.
And who will benefit the most from hearing your journey?
Anyone who finds themselves in that "who am I now" gap, that "why me, what did I do wrong," when in a lot of these situations the honest answer is just probably nothing.
And what's the most important takeaway from your experience?
If something feels off, don't brush over it to keep the peace, most definitely. Honesty is painful in the moment for sure, but it's far cheaper than denial over the years. And we all deserve a relationship where we live in our full life. We don't have to shrink to fit in to someone else's situation.
So Anna, tell us who you are and your experience of your rubble.
Right, so my name's Anna. I am a writer, I'm a journaling facilitator, a trail runner, a bibliophile. For those of you that don't know, that's a lover of books, a nature lover, and I'm an owner of two businesses, Writing with Purpose and Market Avenue Limited. Okay, my rubble. So I guess to explain in some metaphors, and I guess the bricks were crumbling for quite some time before the rubble, but I'm sure a lot of people listening or watching can relate to this. I had a nice house, I lived out in the country, my business marketing agency at the time, focusing on copy, was performing really well. I had a handsome partner, everything from the outside looked great, that whole sort of social media reel, things often look great, whereas things hadn't really been right for a long time on the inside. But deep down, when I look back now, I knew it. Deep down, I knew it. It's just on the surface. You're in denial. You try and gloss over certain things. You try and keep the peace. And I guess at the time, part of that denial was, I don't have children. I had a cat at the time, but I didn't have children to care for. So I threw myself into work. That was the thing that I could control. So I worked for sort of 12, maybe 12 more plus hours every day. And everything was pretty much like a Groundhog Day. Get up, work, eat dinner, watch TV. Sometimes, I was watching hours and hours of television at night. And I actually look forward to that because that was sort of, my way of relaxing. But really, it's the very passive form of enjoyment when you think about it. So yeah, I was living that Groundhog Day. My partner and I had kind of fallen into that housemates trap, rather than being loving partners and enjoying life as you should together. We kind of lived a little bit further away from family and friends, so I'd become estranged a little bit from family and friends, probably seeing parents once every 2 or 3 months. Now I see them every week. Friends, I didn't really see my friends very often, had no friends really. Didn't have that many friends as a couple. And yeah, things were just off. Like I said at the start, things were just off. There was no enjoyment in the relationship. We'd been together for 13 years. When I think about it, things probably weren't right for half of that period. But I was just thinking, this is life now. This is what happens. Things go a bit boring, things go a bit stale. We all know about the honeymoon period, and then that doesn't last forever. But there are ways, of course, to keep a relationship alive. And yeah, we really didn't have that. And I remember the day that we sort of it all came to a head. We'd gone on one of these trips, which is like bird of prey, when you go and you see all these birds of prey, and you can have them on your arm and that sort of thing. And that was quite enjoyable. And we got back, and I was reading a book on on a Kindle, and it was a book about relationships. There was something in my mind that was kind of trying to spot these red flags and things like that. And I remember him asking me what I was reading, and I told him, and he started laughing. And I said, "Well, we're not right, are we?" And I stormed off and went into the kitchen, and that was kind of it, really. It was a bizarre, calm moment after I stopped the tears. And then it was just a kind of honesty of, we're not right. There was no kind of let's work it out. It was just, this is the end. So in a way, we didn't have this massive bust up. We'd never really had arguments. We weren't those kind of people. I think neither of us liked conflict, me especially. So with all these kind of little red flags that I think sometimes you think about, that's not right. Where is he? Why has he said that? Questioning certain things, and the answers don't seem right, but you just brush that over because you don't want the big full-blown argument, and you live in that denial. And yeah, we kind of agreed that it would be best to part ways. We'd got a holiday booked with two friends, which was for my 40th, although it was the following year, and for the friends, one of their daughters' 16th. So we were going to New York. So there's no way I wasn't going to New York. So we agreed that we would go there. Of course, we just went as not even friends or acquaintances, I guess. And then when we got back, I moved out within a week. And yeah, telling you this now, it all seems very mediocre in a way. But there was a lot of things when I think back that, that wasn't right. Just the certain things that were happening. I don't want to go into too much detail. I feel as though I'm hesitating a little bit just in case, anybody watches that might know. But yeah, there was red flags, and I brushed over them. I people pleased all the time. I didn't want to have any conflict, so I accepted some of the answers that I knew weren't true. And when I look back, not necessarily that relationship, but every other relationship had been very similar. I was the one that was being trodden on all the time. I was the one that was giving, but not receiving. And now in the relationship that I've got now, which is completely different, obviously I know all of that was wrong, but I think, it's sometimes empowering to hear these stories from other people, if you're in a similar situation, for, just act on some of those things that feel off, ask those questions, and, if things don't sound right to you, move on. So yeah, I guess that was the rubble. I found myself, I moved back in with my parents for 6 months. I'd always given myself 6 months, and then it was like, well, what next? Who am I now? Life as it was. Yeah, I'd got my own business, so I'd still got that, but I didn't have the house anymore. I didn't have the networking organisations I used to go to because they were too far for me to travel now. I didn't have the same sort of supermarkets I would go and shop in. All of those things that had been so normal for so long and had been my life for so long just were no longer. It was, yeah, that was my rubble.
So you were starting a new chapter of, okay, then I now need to find my feet. There are some things in life that are still consistent. So like you said, your business,
Mm,
moving back in with your parents, that when you're an adult and you live with your parents, because obviously the dynamics are different, when you're a child, hopefully you're, yep, okay, whatever has to happen. Now you're still their child. However, you're an adult, you're
yeah.
independent. So take us back. When the relationship ended, how were you feeling? What were the emotions that were going through you?
Yeah, so a real mixture of emotions. I was lost. I was completely lost, and a lot of the things that was going around in my mind, ruminating, was why me? Why again as well? Because there was a lot of similarities in the relationship that had happened previously. So what's wrong with me? All of those questions, they were all about what I'd done wrong. And I'd always had sort of self-limiting beliefs around not feeling good enough and capable about certain things. So kind of all of that came into the mixture. Very upset for the first few days after we'd sort of had that agreement that we were going to part. That got a little bit better, but then of course certain things happen and you remember certain things, some of the good times as well, and I would get very emotional about that. I remember one time explaining something to my mum and I just broke down in front of her, and like you say, you're an adult but you're still their child, and she didn't know what to do. So we just ended up, she was crying. We just ended up, having this lovely hug for what seemed like a long, long time. I feel quite teary about that now, but that's happiness with, the relationship, I suppose, with my mum. Frustration as well, frustration when I realised that this should have ended years ago. And, I'm not the kind of person that regrets anything. I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And these kind of relationships, these situations we found ourselves in, it shapes us as a person. We gain confidence from it, resilience from it. There's so many lessons to be learned. But I was very frustrated about, how have you let this happen for so long? You could have been in a much better relationship and a much better position, years before. So frustration and sadness, yeah, it just all kind of mixed up there. Anger as well. I say some of those red flags made me very angry. But again, it was because why did you not notice that before? Still all came back to me. But then also there was enjoyment mix there because I was back closer to my friends, and my friends rallied around. I had breakfast with four friends. They bought me a card, a little house plant, that was ready for when my new home would be around. Have had a friend that convinced me to go out trail running with her, which I'd never done before, which was amazing. Fell in love with it, still do it now. Um, yeah, what another friend took me for breakfast and just said, "Oh, I'm so glad that my friend's back and she's living within a mile of me." And these are the people that you just they're kind of your solid foundation, and helps that emotion to sort of become balanced again and regulated again after it being so up and down and yeah, fragile and volatile at the same time.
And having gone through the emotions, what was it that then gave you the motivation, the inspiration to say, okay, then I need to do something. I can't just be here and existing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'd given myself 6 months to be with my parents. That was kind of one of the things that I set right from the start. And I think I got my own place and I moved out within about 5.5 months. So I was within that 6 month period. And it was excitement really. It was the thought of having my own space. I'd never lived alone. I was 41 then at the time, and I'd never really lived alone. I had my own house before, but then I met this ex-partner within 6 months of having my own house. And, so of course we were kind of backwards and forwards between each other's houses. So I'd never lived on my own. And I was really, really excited about that. Having to stand on my own 2 feet, pay my own bills. Yes, I contributed when we were in the relationship, but all of the bills were in his name. So I was quite excited about having, utility bills in my own name and that sort of thing. And the house that I moved in, I fell in love with. It was great energy. The neighbours were lovely. So I was just so excited about that. And I started journaling as well. We've spoken about journaling before a few times. And I've done it off and on before, but I think I sort of found a way to journal that really helped me to release the emotion from my head and process everything that I'd been through, but also to use that blank page to think, hey, let's plan what your life is now going to be like, and what is fulfilling for you. So I was excited about the things that were appearing on the page as well. After I'd got over, the outpour of the all of those mixed emotions, I was very excited about, yeah, what was kind of showing to me, all the goals I wanted to do, where I wanted to take the business, the adventures that I wanted to go on. So yeah, it kind of helped me to go from that really messy point to have more clarity and direction.
How did you get into journaling then? Where did you hear about it? How did it start?
Yeah, I'd journaled off and on most of my life, but I didn't really know what it was. So I've kept a dream journal off and on where I've logged my dreams. I've always wanted to be a fiction writer. That kind of is something that's coming into fruition. But my reason for keep tagging logging my dreams is because we dream some wacky stuff, don't we? And I thought if there's not a story in one of my dreams, then I don't know where I'm going to get one from. So that was kind of the motivation for logging the dreams. And I'd also kept what I would say now is a travel journal. So I worked on cruise ships for a while. This was before getting into this 13-year relationship. And I kept a journal about what had happened on the cruise ships, where we'd been, who we'd met, that sort of thing, scrapbook style. But then after the split, I kind of I've always been a lover of stationery, so I'd got tons of notebooks and pretty pens and things around. So, I reached for one of these and I remember, I don't have it to hand, but it was a nice sort of magenta colour leather. It had got a leather bookmark. It was really swish. It was nice. It was from TK Maxx, so it wasn't cost a fortune, but it was lovely. And I just opened the page and just started to write, really. I'm not sure why, something probably inside me, because I think that's what journaling is. It's getting in touch with you and creating more of that self-awareness and letting what's kind of bubbling underneath our conscious to come out. And yeah, I poured it out to begin with, and then started to use it more for logging my gratitude, what I was thankful for throughout the day. And a bit of planning of how I felt about the new things that I was doing. The trail running, how exhilarating I felt, how much energy that brought me. When in this relationship, I did nothing, I had no hobbies. So it was nice to have this kind of energy that was starting to flow, just naturally, getting outside in nature as well. I wrote about how good I felt, how those things made me feel. So not just what I was doing, but how they made me feel, which was, 10 times better than I was before, and just kind of kept it going from there, really.
And it's so important, isn't it, that when we go through these different changes in our lives, when life throws us a curveball, we need an outlet. So whether it's going and talking to someone or journaling, the process of getting it out of our heads is therapy in itself. And being able to see it written in black and white gives you an opportunity to figure out what's actually happening. Because when it's going on round and round in your head, you can't see it, you can't like try and piece it together. Whereas when it's written down, then you can hopefully see the wood from the trees. And I really loved what you said about you took the opportunity to say what you wanted life to look like. Because unless we take the time to go, right, how do I want life to be? We do end up just sleepwalking through life. We do end up going through the motions, doing the things because we're not conscious of how we want life to look. So you've done some amazing things since the breakup. Tell us about some of the challenges and the things that you got involved with as a result of ending the relationship.
Oh, yeah. So I guess one of the biggest things was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, which was something that I would probably never have considered in that relationship. So yeah, this was with an existing friend, but through the trail running group that I'd gone to, where I'd met lots of new friends, like-minded friends, and we decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I remember the message coming through, "Do you fancy this?" And I said, "I'm saying yes now." book it before I can change my mind. Because that in itself was, I'd never done anything like that before. I was very nervous about the altitude. And you'll know this, Maria, I actually sought out a hypnotherapist to help me. She did me a little recording in the run up to the climb, and then also she did one for me to listen to just before the climb as well, which I actually didn't do. I listened to both of them in the run up, but that really helped me to kind of quash the fears and jump into that place where I would be once I'd reached the summit. And yay, I'm here. That there was no way I was not getting to the top. So that so that was the big thing. Yeah, having the new hobby of trail running was just amazing, and walking. I'd done the Isle of Wight coastal route as well. That was something else that was a nice challenge to do. Because journaling had helped me so much, I retrained. So I've always been into words as far as my career goes, but I did a master's in creative writing and wellbeing because I just wanted to share the benefits of journaling with other people. So I wanted to have some, evidence-based tools in my arsenal for that. So yeah, I retrained. I did a few other certifications in teaching journaling as well. So I kind of transformed my business. Had this new house, met a lovely new partner who was very grounding, very different to anyone else that I'd ever been with before, and sort of loved me for who I was, which I think is, another real lesson learned. Until you're in that situation, you don't really recognize that, some of those past relationships were never ever right. They were never going to work because you were two different people. And now we are like that, to use a cliche, we are like that kind of jigsaw piece. We support each other. Yes, we're different, but everything kind of makes that nice, rounded. I'm gonna cake popped into my head then for some reason. So yeah, I feel as though I've done so much more in the first 2 years of that breakup. I always used to say I've done so much more than I did for the last, 10 or so years. And I don't want to say it was all bad. It wasn't all bad, but the half of that relationship was just numb, really. Um, so yeah, I can't. Oh, you put me on the spot there. I can't think of anything else. Have you read up on me? And there's something else that I have to
No, I think
say.
that's what I've read. So, I mean, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, not many people have done it, and I haven't really been at altitude. I know the impact it has because my husband did a walk in Nepal, so they were slowly walking and getting used to the changes in the altitude. And obviously, England played recently against Mexico, and they were at altitude as well. So it has an effect on the body when that's not the your normal place of being. So to do something that is challenging, climbing a mountain and having to deal with the changes in altitude, I mean, you're putting your body under pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's strange. Right? You're saying that. I always, if it's a challenge for me and it involves me, I'm more than happy to do it. Whereas if it's a challenge that involves sort of other people and I'm perhaps organising things, I'm a little bit more reluctant to do it. But for me now, anyway, I'll sort of sign up to anything once
Well, I mean,
to
what's
do
the
it.
worst that can happen?
Well, you don't make the summit in that instance, isn't it? The only way I can describe it is it's like the morning after you've had a good night out on the town, um, times 10. You're delirious. You're off balance. Your head hurts. Your stomach hurts. People are different as well. I've been told that sometimes you can have one experience, and if you do it again, your experience is completely different. I didn't have a great experience on about the third day. And then the summit, I didn't have a great experience. For me, I feel bad because I was up there, we had the photo taken, and then I said, get me back down as quickly as you can. So I pretty much ran most of the way back down to the camp just because you needed to regulate myself again. I didn't. Yeah, it's very strange. I wouldn't want to put anybody off. It's worth it just to, see that sunrise at the top and go through all of those. I think there's about 5 different ecosystems that you walk through from the bottom to the top. You see monkeys in the jungle at the bottom and then, ice at the top. It's phenomenal.
So if you look back on Anna before and Anna now, describe some of the differences between those two individuals.
Uh, so Anna before was very suppressed in a way, very I was still me with the right people, I think, in the right environment, but I didn't put myself in those places very often. Very cautious, I was all about the work. And because I was all about the work, a couple of times, once I burnt out, and then a second time I was very close to burning out again because I was just doing too much. I didn't focus on my diet. There was lots of things that I didn't do for me that I knew were healthy and nutritious. I made bad choices, constantly in my head all the time, or I would be seeking, as I say, entertainment, just watching the television, so I didn't have to think about how crappy I was and the situation that I was in. Now, um, I'm a lot more animated. I've got a lot more energy. I do so much. I'm still super, super busy because I've never been a person that can not be doing something. But now I'm doing something outside or, I'm doing something in the house. I find it hard to relax, properly relax. My version of relaxing is, I don't know, reading a book or, going out on a walk, which is still in a way physically moving or moving mentally. But I'm just so much happier. Like I try and live like we still have ups and downs, of course, but I do live life to the max now. Whereas before, I would say that I was sleepwalking in life. I didn't really have an enjoyable life. Yeah.
So for people who are listening to this and can relate to your story of being in a relationship that doesn't feel right for whatever reason, what advice would you give them?
Have the courage and the confidence to speak up, even if it's just a conversation of, hey, this doesn't feel right because of XYZ. How do you feel? And just see what that opens up. And it might not go the way you expect in a positive way. Or it might actually go worse than you expect. But I think, like any of these situations, there's always positivity and joy on the side of unhappiness, and we just have to get ourselves through that. But I would much rather have a few days, a few weeks, a couple of months of hurt and pain to have a decade of happiness and to have it the opposite way around. So I think just take the courage to have that conversation with the person. If you don't feel that confident yet, have a conversation with somebody else, or reach for a journal if you don't want to speak to somebody else, and have that as your friend and your confidant, because you will be surprised as to what comes out. And when we write in that journal, in that page, honesty often comes out, and it might be a surprise, but it's truthful.
And my final question to you is, what 3 things would you like people to take away from our conversation?
That's a tough question, isn't it? I think motivation maybe to make a change for the better, and that might not be from something that you're in a bad situation with, but make a change. Inspiration to try new things, and connection with people that matter.
Nice. I like those. So before we wrap up, people will be listening and watching saying, Anna, she's amazing. I need to be in her world. Make it easy for them. How can they connect with you?
So they can find me on social media under Journaling with Anna. That's journaling with 2 L's. on Instagram, TikTok, although I'm not very active on there. I've got a journaling group on Facebook as well, or just search for the website Writing with Purpose, and there's all sorts of things on there. There's workshops, free resources, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone.
So that just leaves me to say thank you, Anna, for being open and honest with us and sharing your story.
Thank you for allowing me to do that.
And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Thank you for listening to Rising from the Rubble. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Also, remember to download your free life assessment. Just click the link in the description to get started. Take care, and remember, every setback is an opportunity for growth. I'll see you next time.